Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Julie Gilbert. I'm here with Rachel Matthews, certified health and wellness coach from Oregon Weight and Wellness. And we are talking about nutrition, specifically Michael Pollan's book, Food Rules. Now, this is not advice specifically for people, anyone individually, but we're just talking in general healthy nutrition. And Rachel, what chapter are we on today?
I believe we are on chapter 7.
Yes.
And chapter 7 is avoid food products containing ingredients that a third grader cannot pronounce.
Yeah, short and sweet. Yeah, I might as well read the whole chapter.
Okay? Yes. Yeah.
He says basically the same idea, different mnemonic, although I didn't understand the mnemonic part of that. Did you?
No, I didn't know what he was referring to.
That was kind of confusing to me. But keep it simple. I do understand that mnemonic. Actually, my dad used to say KISS, keep it simple,
Silly.
Yeah, silly. Okay, there you go. Right. So maybe that's the mnemonic. Keep it simple. Right. If you can't pronounce it, or a third grader can't pronounce it, you got to wonder, what is it? Right. And what's it doing in my body? Yeah. So,
yes.
Right. Because not everything that I put in my body, not everything that's in packaged food is great for my body. And actually, sometimes those things can gum up the works and add to chronic disease. So, interestingly, there's something called pharmacodynamics and pharmacokinetics. And one thing has to do with what the body does to the chemical, and the other thing has to do with what the chemical does to the body. And I think that, in order for the government organization, you can tell me which one it is, to consider something generally recognized as safe.
FDA.
It's not looking, thank you. It's not looking at both of those things. It's only looking at one aspect of them. So just because it's generally recognized as safe doesn't mean I understand everything that thing is doing in my body, and that it may not be doing things that I don't want it to do, like gumming up the works, for example, with insulin working in cells. So many chemicals that we take in gums up those works. But anyway, I digress. So you had a few words on nutrient ingredient list that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I thought, if somebody was looking up online and they were just Googling, okay, what are the dangerous, harmful chemicals, but then also what are the safe chemicals? Because we know, for anyone who's ever taken any science class in any grade level, vitamins have these long, crazy names.
Yeah.
We have words like polyunsaturated fatty acid, right? What in the world? Short chain, polyunsaturated, monounsaturated. These are words that are big and long, and we don't use them in our general daily, language. They can be hard to pronounce, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're harmful for us.
True. Very true. Good point.
Yeah. So I thought, well, let's look it up. So I looked up a list of things that could be considered safe. Again, some of these things are considered safe by the FDA, but like Dr. Gilbert said, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're good for you. So let's start with stearic acid. It's a food additive and a binder, considered safe. Anything you would want to add to stearic acid, Dr. Gilbert?
Well, yeah, sure. Stearic acid is actually one of the fatty acids found in, it's the main saturated fat that's found in beef, so I think of stearic acid. That reminds me. Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Nice.
So, yeah. So, and it's neutral. It's neutral in its effect on the body. So it doesn't promote disease. All right.
But you can find it in foods that are things like sunflower oil and chocolates and candy and chewing gum, right? So stearic acid, but you can also find it in things like, hot whole chocolate or in milk. So it could be unhealthy food, but it could also be healthier food,
Yes.
but by itself, it's not unhealthy.
Right. Yeah. And so that's a great point, because we're not really eating things by themselves. They're, in combination with other chemicals and stuff.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Another one is glycerin. Glycerin is considered a thickener, also considered safe by the FDA. It's in things like marshmallows, but also in grains and baked goods, oats, cereal, nut butters. It can be in vinegar, mustard, sauces. Thoughts on,
Right.
on glycerin?
Yeah. Sugar. Right. Yeah. So essentially the body would see it as sugar, even though it's being used as this thickener. The body's going to recognize it as sugar and treat it as such. So
Right.
even though it's not, you can pronounce it, your body's going to recognize that as a long chain starch, and then break it down into sugar.
Yeah. Yeah. So how about some of the vitamins, right? You're going to see things like cyanocobalamin. That's just B12. You're going to see things like pyridoxine, which is just B6, right? You're going to see thiamine mononitrate. That's B1.
Mm-hmm.
These are good. These are fine as additives into the foods. This is typically what somebody would add and say, oh, it's fortified, right?
Mm-hmm.
This food is fortified.
Right. That's exactly right. But so right, they're not harmful, but how helpful are they? Because when you separate a vitamin from its natural source, let's say, I don't know. Right. Okay. I'm not necessarily. Anyway, like vitamin E, for example, and you just then you separate it from its source, natural food source, whatever and then you put it back in, or you take it as a supplement. It isn't the same as taking it in from the natural food source, because the natural food source is going to have the other phytonutrients that work synergistically with that vitamin. So it's not necessarily bad, like I would never say B12 in something is bad, but it may not be absorbed in the same way that naturally occurring B12 is, as an example. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example of how we just have to be discerning and understand and learn more. And in and of itself, harmful, no, but should we be getting all of our vitamins from a fortified cereal?
Right.
No.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. Or from a bottle of vitamins, right?
Right. Yeah, like those quick energy drinks. Yeah. Right.
Some of the additives that you guys are probably going to recognize very quickly that are going to be more on the dangerous side are going to be things like monosodium glutamate, MSG. Right. Not too terribly hard to pronounce, but we know what MSG is. It's an additive. It enhances flavor. It's in frozen foods and snacks and canned foods, and a lot of restaurant chains use this, make it highly palatable, very flavorful. But it's a controversial food additive. What would you like to add to that?
Yeah, so exactly. And when there are additives like that make foods hyper palatable, that really hijacks our very unique and delicate balance of hunger and satiety hormones. So when foods are hyper palatable, for example, with MSG, the brain can't hear the signaling of the gut to tell you stop eating. So we are more likely to overeat those foods that have those additives in them, because your brain is supposed to, get signals from the gut in response to a meal and the gut releases things like CCK, cholecystokinin, PYY, oxyntomodulin, and GLP-1, and those dump into the bloodstream and go to the brain to say, hey, brain, you had food, stop eating. And that signaling is blocked. Your brain cannot hear that when foods have additives like MSG, which make them hyperpalatable, and you just want to eat more and more and more. So.
Yeah, yeah. Ooh, it's so great to understand and see, it's like you can learn this pathway, but the more and more we hear it, I think the more and more we understand that foods, these additives, are hijacking our natural innate ability to
Mhm.
eat a reasonable portion, to eat the right types of foods, to feel
Right.
satisfied, to feel happy and content. Listen, if you're trying to eat a piece of broccoli and it's competing with a piece of broccoli that's been cooked with MSG, it's a different thing. And
Mhm.
right, and you're being hijacked, and then a natural piece of broccoli cannot compete. Right,
That's right. Yeah.
it cannot compete with this. So okay, that's a really good one. That's a really good one that we can avoid. What are some other names that it comes under, though, Dr. Gilbert? Are there other names to look out for any?
Yes. Well, even I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel, but even if there's natural flavors, I don't know if they are allowed to say, if it's MSG, if they're allowed to call it natural flavors. That's interesting in the food labeling and all the rules and regulations and what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do. I can't remember if MSG is allowed to fall under the category of natural flavors.
I don't know. Yeah, that's a great question. And, it's a really great point that, you see the word natural and flavor, and you're thinking, well, then it must be good. And what could be falling underneath that category? Could be some healthy, fine things, but also some really harmful things that aren't actually natural. So it's really unfortunate that we're not all, trained food scientists to be able to navigate this stuff.
Yeah, it can be really tricky.
Really tricky. Yeah. So artificial food coloring. Now, artificial food coloring, that's not hard to pronounce, but sometimes the names of them, so for instance, red color 3 is also called erythrocene. So if you saw that word, you wouldn't know it was a food coloring, but we obviously artificial food colorings in candies and foods to make them look pretty. Also, they're put in condiments to make, maybe ketchup look brighter red or mustard look brighter orange. Sodium nitrite. This is a big one. Right? It's in processed foods to act as a preservative to prevent bacteria and growth. But it's linked with cancer in processed foods, processed meats.
Right. Yeah. It might not be the meat, but it's the way the meat was processed is the baddie. It does bad things in the body, and that includes those nitrite.
Right.
Yeah.
Nitrite. Yeah. Okay, this is an interesting one. Guar gum. So it's spelled Guar. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this on food packaging. Guar gum is a long chain carbohydrate. It's used to thicken, to bind. It's used in all sorts of things like dressings and sauces, soups, salads, ice cream. It has been linked with a lot of high food benefits. It's really high in fiber. But in too much, it can cause bloating and gas and an uncomfortable gut feeling. For some, in moderation, it could be associated with a feeling of fullness and a feeling of satiation, but too much. So what do you think about guar gum?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to say I'm still learning about all these the xanthan gums, the guar gums, chicory. I think there's probably some that are better than others. So inulin seems to be probably a good one and serves that similar what am I trying to say? Purpose. Thank you.
Fiber and health and fillings.
Yeah. Chicory root, inulin, pectin, those kind of things seem to be, I don't know, better, but so what I don't know is how it affects the gut microbiome, and maybe this is a very individual thing. And so I'm still learning about those, Rachel.
Yeah, as am I. It's something that's kind of ongoing, and like you said, what I read when I'm usually researching this is that it's very individual, and for some who have a sensitive gut, it might be a disruption, right, to their gut. So that's along xanthan gum, guar gum. What's the other one? You see it a lot. It starts with an M. I can't think of what it is. All right. How about high fructose corn syrup?
You can pronounce that, but is it good?
Right.
Yeah. See the chapter, whatever, 4, right?
Yes.
If you're still questioning that, go back and read, reread. Right?
And go look at our archived videos.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So another one here is carrageenan. So, right. So this is, it's also used as an emulsifier, a thickener, and a preservative. It's found in ice cream and milk and coffee creamers and dairy-free products and cottage cheese. And it was linked to increased levels of fasting blood sugars and glucose intolerance. And also, gut digestive, issues and possibly ulcers and growth. So yeah, so it's not linked to some very great things.
Right. Yeah. Maybe something to avoid.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, we've kind of gone through a nice list here of maybe not unhealthy, but also maybe not great for you things.
Right.
All of them are not things like broccoli.
Exactly. Yeah.
Spinach or chicken or beef. Like those are real obvious. We know what those are, and they come as simple as they can be. Anything else processed in any category is going to have some other things we have to be aware of.
That's right. And I just want to reiterate before we close is that those chemicals can have the unique ability to hijack our hormones that we have in place so that our brain knows when we're hungry and sends signals to eat. And then when we eat real food, then we're going to signal satiety hormones to stop eating.
Yeah.
And, if we're eating slowly and seated and we give our body time to digest, then we're going to be able to hear those hunger and satiety signals well to help maintain a healthy weight. Now, the one sure way to upset that whole system is to throw processed foods at it because of their ability just to override that beautiful regulatory system that we have. Mm-hmm. And, and if we override it with sugary beverages or, really refined carbohydrates or all these processed oils, then we can't hear the beautiful signaling that we have. And then we may gain some weight. So, and then it makes weight hard to lose. So, yeah, so we want to respect our bodies, right? And the way we, they're designed with these beautiful regulatory systems, these hormones that are to help us hear when we're hungry and when we're full. And and that can really help maintain a healthy weight.
So can I ask you a question that some people might be thinking? Yeah. So I'm thinking of the patient or the person who hears what you're saying about transitioning to healthy whole foods, and they start to do this, but their signaling isn't working yet. Right. They're not feeling full. Is it possible that this process that's been damaged takes time to heal and to reconnect?
Yeah, exactly. And so there's no rush. We need to give ourselves grace and time. And it is interesting to know that, when we're really hungry, ghrelin is increased, and protein has a unique ability to suppress ghrelin and keep it down longer than, let's say, for sure, refined carbohydrates. But we got to give ourselves grace and time. And, but the hope is that we can, when we put real food back into the body wants to heal, and it will come back to a more normal regulation of those hunger and satiety hormones.
Yeah. And that's the hope, right? That's the hope. That's exciting. It doesn't happen overnight. So we have to, like you said, patience and grace.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Rachel, what do you have on board for tonight? What do you
yeah. So we just got back from camping for a week. So we're really trying to clean up our diet and kind of get back to as we a pretty good job for the first 4 or 5 days camping. And then after a while, you're running out of all the fresh stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm feeling like I need a Roto-Rooter, but gosh, tonight is, I'm going to try to make I'm always saying salad, but my garden came in huge over the weekend. I've got tons of fresh yellow squash and cucumber, and then a bunch of microgreens. So I'm going to try to toss something up with that and probably throw in some tempeh or tofu or some legumes or something.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Simple. Yeah. I need simple tonight.
Yeah. Right.
You.
Well, we have some I got some eggplant. And so I'm going to do something like ratatouille.
Ooh, I love that dish.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going to have all the vegetables, the yellow and squash and the zucchini and onion and tomato and what else? The eggplant, of course.
Uh-huh. And it's so pretty when you layer it up, right? It's so beautiful.
Yeah. So that's my plan with marinara, and we'll have to figure out a protein. I don't know that quite yet, but we'll figure that out. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Well, until next time, thanks for joining us, and give us a call if you have any questions. We're at Oregon Weight and Wellness, 971-273-7143. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See you later.